Well, hey everyone, how we doing? We're happy to be with you here, and for those of you watching the rebroadcast of this, we're here today with a brother in chiropractic and brother in the Lord, Dr. Pete Sulack. And you know, for those of you who don't know, Pete is known as one of the nation's experts when it comes to stress, and we're just so happy that we're able to collaborate with him and talk a little bit about you know, what's happening with stress and things are going on in the United States with this epidemic of stress and how we're seeing it, you know, affect people of all ages. So, Dr. Pete, welcome, buddy. I'm great to connect with you here.
Hey, Dr. John, it's an honor to be with you, sir. It's a great privilege, and I'm so thankful for all that you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, we're on similar paths or parallel paths, and we try to help patients from all around the country and all around the world in your situation, a lot of the mission work that you do, combat this battle of stress. And I think if we have to talk about stress, and by the way, this is going to be a series that we're going to do. This is a part one, you know, and I think in moving forward in this series, especially through the holiday time, we have to kind of define what stress is. And before we even look at that, we need to figure out what health is. So give me your opinion. What's your opinion on what you think health is?
You know, we have a misconception in America, as you know, and around the world that assumes that if you feel good, you're healthy. So if it's not broke, don't fix it. Yet people feel good and die of heart attacks, feel good and have cancer. And then we have another misconception that says germs make you sick. But if that was ultimately the case, we'd really all be dead. The truth of the matter is germs make a weak host sick, a body that's not resilient. And so health is really about resilience. It's a buzzword that I talk to my patients about all the time. How resilient are you in facing life on a regular basis when it comes to radiation and EMF fields, and when it comes to just diet and the standard American diet and just life? You know, life is stressful. I heard recently we have more stress now in 1 month than a generation ago had in their entire lifetime, only one generation ago. So how resilient can we make your body to face the stressors of life and the environment we're faced with on a regular basis?
Yeah, I think that's interesting when you talk about that, Doc, because a lot of people, you know, and I'll be honest, I have something to admit to everyone on this. I taught stress wrong for so many years. You know, I taught stress as a horrible thing and that we don't need stress and we should try to totally eliminate it, and it's not true. There was a really interesting study that really made me change my mind, and it came out of the University of Wisconsin. And what they basically did is they looked at 30,000 adults and they followed them over an 8-year period. And they basically asked them two questions. Number one, how much stress do you have in your life, right? Mild, moderate, severe. And then the second question was, do you think stress is bad for you? And so they followed them over that 8-year period, and basically they looked at mortality rates or death records and kind of tracked those individuals. And the interesting thing was that over that 8-year period, if you had a high level of stress, you had a 43% increase of chance of dying. But that was only true if you thought stress was bad for you.
Yeah,
it was amazing. So it's the perception of stress. Actually, the people or the category that was the lowest were the people that had the highest amounts of stress, but they actually thought stress was good for them. Yeah. And so they had the lowest death rates of anybody. So exactly what you're saying about resilience is the key. Can we build a better adaptation or resilience to what's happening on and what's going on with stress? Because we don't want to totally eliminate it. Yeah. Right? Because some stress is good, but can we build that bigger resilience? The interesting thing they estimated on that, Doc, I thought it was pretty amazing, is they estimated that nearly 20,000 people, it was 182,000 people had died because they thought stress was bad for them, not because of stress themselves, right? They estimated in the United States it would have been that number over that period of time. So, and it led to some additional studies coming out of Harvard that our perception, if we can change our perception and we can educate people about that perception of stress, then we can totally change the outcome of it.
Yeah. You know, the thing is, Dr. John, is stress is inevitable. We face it every day of our life. And, you know, I speak a lot around the world on stress, everything from Fox News to CNN. Shape Magazine called me up not too long ago because Carrie Underwood jumped out of an airplane and they wanted to know, is that a good stress or a bad stress? And, you know, you can only imagine when the elections occurred last November, everyone and their mother called me, from People Magazine to Breitbart to New York Times, the Washington Post. They all wanted to know how to deal with the stress of our new president. But stress is more than just drama, stress. And I think that's what we have to understand, that stress affects you every day of your life, but it comes in many different shapes and sizes. It's physical, car accidents, falls, whiplash injuries, living life, a sedentary lifestyle is physical stress, but it's also emotional. Just living life, relationships, abuse, trauma, going to work, that work environment, but it's also chemical. The food that you eat, the air that you breathe, sugar, aspartame, gluten, the protein dairy called casein, the asbestos, and we're faced with those on a regular basis. But if it's all about removing the bad stuff, we need to go live in a bubble, because the reality, we're faced with 10,000 cancer-causing agents on a regular basis. So how do I create resilience? How do I make my body as resilient as possible in the face of stress on a regular basis? And then, yes, it will actually fuel you. Stress is inevitable, and my response to stress is a good thing. Stress is really an internal response to an external world that I'm faced with. So how effective and efficient is my body in dealing with this world around me on a regular basis? It's really the essence of health and how I can live a happy and healthy life.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, as you're talking about levels of stress, from generation to generation, what we're seeing in our world is that people are becoming more and more stressed. We're dealing with more and more of it. There's, deadlines that we're meeting. You were talking about physical, chemical, and emotional. The old adage is you're burning the candle at both ends. Well, the reality is most people have a 3-wick candle. They're not only burning both ends, they're burning the middle too. And I know you often teach about caging that tiger of stress. I think it's a great analogy, because I think people really understand the story of that, and it makes a bit better sense to them. So,
the biggest thing is that our body is fearfully and wonderfully made, as we know. Our body was created to work, and so how do we give the body the chance to do it, as opposed to, well, in your body is what's called an HPA axis. It's simply what takes in your environment and processes it effectively. And so we'll call going to a zoo and a tiger gets out, we'll call that a stressful situation. And in that stressful situation, actually the hypothalamus takes that information from the environment, sends a message to the pituitary, which sends it to the adrenal glands, and your adrenal glands release the stress hormones, cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, and you're in a fight or flight response, like you're running away from a tiger. Well, in that situation, my pupils will dilate to see the environment I'm running to. My heart rate will go up, my blood pressure will go up, and at the same time those things go up, my digestive system shuts down. Why? Well, because I don't need to digest food if I'm running away from a tiger. My immune system as well shuts down, but it's a protective mechanism. But when they cage the tiger, it allows that there's what's called a negative feedback loop back to the hypothalamus to bring the body to homeostasis and rest. And as long as that process is working effectively, my body adapts to the stressors of life and recovers effectively, and that's a good thing. The problem becomes when my body adapts and doesn't get all the way back to homeostasis and rest. Literature will now call that HPA axis dysfunction. It simply means your body adapted physiologically but never made it back to homeostasis and rest. And if your body fails to come back to homeostasis and rest, it leaves your body in a susceptible state. It's no longer resilient. And that's a dangerous thing. I actually had one of my doctors recently really begin to pull together the information for the top 50 diseases on the planet, everything from heart disease to cancer, infertility, diabetes. And what we found in the literature is at the root of all the top 50 disease processes what's called HPA axis dysfunction or dysregulation. Simply, their body adapted physiologically and never made it back to homeostasis and rest. And if the body falls short of homeostasis and rest, that's where free radicals are created. Oxidative stress occurs there, inflammation, chronic illness. But if we can get the body to homeostasis and rest, the body will actually come back to homeostasis and increase the resilience once again of that body. And that's imperative. We want the body to adapt physiologically, like you said, but we need it to recover and recover all the way back to homeostasis and rest.
Yeah, great point there. And, we're that metaphorical tiger you're talking about that chases us, we realize that we're not literally being chased by a tiger, but it's around us everywhere, right? It's in our work and our relationships and driving in the car and traffic and everything else. And, the interesting thing to me and what we try to tell our clients is your brain doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Right? There's an awesome book out there called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Right? And I'm sure you've seen it and you've read it, but we possess something that the zebras don't have. It's called an imagination. So your body and your adrenal glands, that HPA axis, doesn't understand the difference whether this stress is real or it's a perceived stress or something we're making up. And oftentimes our imagination goes wild on us. It'll create that same stress. So it really becomes kind of the dog chasing its tail. And when you're talking about getting back to resilience, it's breaking that loop or stopping that insaneness that's going on where the dog's chasing its tail.
You know, if you look at the new studies and the new research out there, when it comes to a person that's stuck in what's called HPA axis dysfunction, simply their body adapted physiologically and never made it back. But to explain a little bit further, if I may, you know, at homeostasis, your body's the most resilient. That's where your detoxification mechanisms are the strongest, your digestion is the strongest, your immune system's the strongest. And under stress, the body adapts physiologically, and then when that stress goes away, the body comes back to homeostasis. So, for instance, you know, I saw recently, if a person has a 32-ounce soft drink, within 30 minutes, their body's in a full-blown stress response, and it takes 4 hours to get back to homeostasis and rest. Simply put, every 32-ounce soft drink, you just shut your immune system off for 4 hours and made your body susceptible. Basically, you put a target on your back and said, hey, sickness, disease, come after me.
Right.
Weaken your mechanisms to fight. Well, a person with heart disease, cancer, PTSD, infertility, their body adapts and doesn't recover. You know, going back to the book, you know, Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, you know, the uniqueness about zebras is that when they get away from a predator, whether the lion or the tiger, within 30 seconds, their body is able to restore itself to homeostasis and rest. So their body's that resilient. You know, and Dr. John, you know this. There's only really 3 ways. Once the body leaves homeostasis and gets stuck in HPA axis dysfunction, there's only 3 ways proven by science right now to restore that. Number 1 is your thought process. It's the perception by how you see life. And it's if I'm looking at life in my future in a negative light, I'm actually putting my body in a worse stress response. But if I can see my life in a positive outlook, it actually restores homeostasis. Number 2, what's called proprioception or movement. You know, as a doctor of chiropractic, you know, by freeing up that spinal cord, releases proprioceptors to the brain. And what's really the biggest benefit of that? It gets the body back to homeostasis and rest. But the third way, proven by science, to restore homeostasis and rest are what are called adaptogenic herbs. Adaptogens are unique because they affect the HPA axes of the brain, and they act as a thermostat of the brain. So while caffeine is a stimulant, and then there's uppers and downers, adaptogens are unique because they do both. They actually restore homeostasis. So if you're down, they bring you up, and if you're up, they bring you down. And that's why we created the product Stress RX, because we wanted a synergistic blend of 3 adaptogens, ashwagandha, cordyceps, and rhodiola, that work effectively together in getting your body back to homeostasis. Hey, stress is inevitable. It's going to face you every day of your life. And if you look at it from the right perspective, it's a good thing. But let's create resiliency, and we do that by getting the body to homeostasis continually, often, and all the time.
Yeah. And Dr. Pete, you know, the neat thing about that is you're not talking about making a drastic shift in your life, right? Yeah. You're talking about changing the way you think a little bit, change the way you move, and change the way you're feeding your body. And some of these adaptogenic herbs are just phenomenal. And again, you mentioned they've been around for years. They've been around for centuries. People have used these adaptogens that way. So let's break down. Go ahead.
No, I just say I travel around the world a lot, and and they've been using adaptogens for 5,000 years. And the uniqueness about it is adaptogens will change your life. They're the game changer because they help create resilience and making sure that negative feedback loop to the brain to get the body to homeostasis is working more and more effectively all the time. And it actually speeds up that negative feedback loop to the brain. And so we're really excited about them. And everyone that's ever used adaptogens loves them because it helps them deal with life more effectively.
Yeah, and I think that the thing with that too, Dr. Pete, is it works so quickly, right? Yeah. When we start a nutritional program and we start using these adaptogens like Stress RX, patients notice the difference so rapidly with it.
Yeah, they do, and it's a very quick response. And, I actually developed it initially because I found that so many people that were coming to me from around the world, they were coming in with cancer and Parkinson's and PTSD, and I was seeing them. We were restoring that movement, that proprioception. Okay, we were helping them alter their thought process. The problem is when they're leaving, stress is inevitable. And what we found is that just sometimes stress is so overwhelming that you don't have that proper counterbalance. Right. It's like you don't have the ability to, to overcome the I can't, that negative mindset. And what we found with this group of adaptogens is it allows you to overcome that I can't and begin to know that, hey, you can face life, and we're getting the body to homeostasis all the time. I personally take them in the morning when I wake up, because it was actually proven to increase the sensitivity of the neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine, increasing my focus, memory, concentration, and mood. And then when I leave the office in the evening, I actually take 2 more because it brings you back down to homeostasis. It creates resilience so you can enjoy your family in the evening as well.
Absolutely. And I think when you describe that, sort of like a thermostat, right? It can raise the temperature, it can lower the temperature, it can work either way. That's the neat thing about it. So, well, listen, I know as we move forward here, we've talked a little bit about what stress is, and perhaps the next show we can talk a little bit about how do I know if I'm dealing with problems with stress? What are the things that, the exams that we can look at, or what are some of the signs that we might see if a person's overloaded with stress? So maybe we can breach that the next time, especially coming into this holiday season, because although it's a time of Thanksgiving for people and a celebration, of course, at Christmas time of the birth of Christ, a lot of people still see this as a very stressful time of year. It's a lot of pressures that come on financially. There's a lot of deadlines and parties and things like that they have to meet. So maybe we can talk about some of the signs and symptoms, and so that people can realize maybe I have an issue, maybe I need to get somewhere and start to deal with some of this stuff. So.
I love that, Doc. And we are coming up to Christmas. We are coming up to the holidays. We eat differently than we do the rest of the year. We have those relatives that come in and kind of cross those boundaries that we've set for ourselves. We no longer have margins. And, someone recently said, well, Dr. Pete, come on, 100 years ago, they went in an outhouse. You talk about stress. I understand that, and I don't have to go into an outhouse anymore. But you have to understand it's the technology we're faced with on a regular basis. It's all these EMFs. It's the genetically modified foods. It's the sugar that's just out of this world right now when it comes to weakening that immune system, and it actually decreases resilience, and it takes the body to homeostasis. And so we want to make sure that we can help, like you with your patients and me with mine, help our people get on the road to a happy and healthy life and win. It's not how you start the race, it's how you finish the race. And we want to help you get back in the game and finish the race very, very effectively.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, our next show, we want to make sure you come back and join us. Our next show is going to be on November 17th, and then we're going to have one December 8th also. So the Stress 101 series, we'll talk next time about how do you know if stress is affecting you. I know you're headed out of town here for a while, right?
Yeah. Somewhere here in a few days. I'm excited about it. I love traveling around the world and doing humanitarian work and just giving people hope.
Isn't that the truth? And if you can do nothing else but give them hope, at least you put them on the right path toward health. So listen, brother, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I pray for safe travels for you and your team as you're headed abroad there. And I can't wait to be back with you in a couple weeks where we'll take this to the next level with Stress 101. So God bless you, Dr. Pete.
Thanks, Doc. I appreciate it. And thank you for all that you're doing to help us spread the message and really help people get on the road to a happy and healthy life.
Awesome. Take care, my friend.
You too. Bless you, sir. Bye now.